And Abby joined us earlier today to talk more Monsanto and GMO foods. I first asked her about Monsanto's history of scandals. Here's her take.
Yeah, Liz, there's so much scandal, it's hard to put all in one package, but going back to aspartame, it's an artificial sweetener that's 200 times sweeter than sugar, first owned by Cyril, who the CEO was Donald Rumsfeld at the time, and then when he joined Reagan's cabinet, they passed through aspartame when the National Association of Soft Drink Association said, we do not want this passed. All the tests that Cyril have presented to us are full of holes, shoddy at best. So that was passed through. Monsanto later acquired Cyril. And then you see the FDA commissioner who was appointed during that time that passed aspartame later joined the public relations firm for Monsanto and Cyril. So there's just a revolving door that goes back decades with these companies. Also DDT, it was a pesticide that was produced by Monsanto that was banned in 1972. And since that ban, we've seen a tenfold increase in bald eagles and osprey. And also bovine growth hormone, another interesting thing that Monsanto has tried to put a lockdown on the labeling of bovine growth hormone. And we saw two reporters from Fox News who tried to put the story out, and Monsanto directly put the black hand of censorship over them and said, you know, you can't air this. And when they decided to go out with the story, they were subsequently fired. So there is a long slew of scandal that didn't even fit into this story today. That's just a small portion of, you know, what Monsanto has done.
And you had mentioned there are a lot of the chemicals, a lot of the additives in these foods. Ultimately, how is that affecting our health here in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you don't see a lot of independent studies done in the U.S. because of a lack of funding. And Monsanto has threatened a lot of independent scientists with cutting their funding. So you see a lot of studies done outside of the U.S. Jeffrey Smith has some excellent research about this, but it's shown in animal studies cancer, birth defects, hormone inequalities, just a slew of things that are just found with genetically modified foods. Unfortunately, it's hard to test because we're all like sitting guinea pigs in our generation, since we don't know what's caused by what. So we're all eating genetically modified foods. It's in over 70% of all the foods in our supermarkets. A lot of people say, well, you know, I'm not eating GMOs because they don't know. But the base of all foods in supermarkets is corn and soy, the majority of them, and all processed foods. So it is hard to tell, you know, where these health effects are coming from, diabetes and all these.
And that's the thing, because in other countries, they require labeling. Several other countries require labeling of GMO foods. And here in the U.S., Americans would like to know if the foods we are eating are GMO, contain GMO products. Why don't we have that labeling?
Well, unlike other countries, we have deemed GMO foods to be substantially equivalent. Bush Sr. Passed this through in 1992 with the FDA. And what it says is that GMO foods are substantially equivalent to non-GMO foods. So they're pretty much equal. And that's completely different than any other country, really, in the European world.
One's GMO, the other's not.
Right. Well, they're both, apparently, according to the FDA, there's no proof. And like unlike other countries, the U.S. does not require their own independent tests to verify whether these foods are safe or not. What they do is have these firms and agricultural giants conduct their own research and tests. And when the FDA passed this as substantially equivalent, there was internal documents released later from FDA scientists that said, hey, this isn't true and we completely disagree with this. But it's kind of been swept under the rug. Like I said, there's a revolving door between this corporation and the government, all the way back to the acquisition of Cyril, and also Michael Taylor, who was working for Monsanto as the vice president, is now the food safety czar in Obama's cabinet.
And it seems like there's a lot between businesses and congressmen in this revolving door. Ultimately, if it's not benefiting and not in the best interest of Americans, how is this all able to happen?
through lobbying. I mean, really, this corporation has so much control over the research and over the facts in this country. And we just saw Vermont try to take initiative to form their own labeling law, and it didn't pass through because they were scared of a lawsuit from Monsanto. I mean, Monsanto's gone after 144 small farmers because their crops have cross-pollinated, and just their whole business practice with their seeds. They have patents on their genetically modified seeds, and if these genetically modified seeds cross-pollinate, which crops do out in open fields, I mean, these aren't contained in domes, so of course, pollen's going to spread in other fields, and when it does, they can go over to these farmers' land and say, you need to destroy not only this harvest, but all of your past harvests of seeds. And for small farmers, I mean, this is their whole family, this is their whole livelihood, are these seeds that have been acquired through generations. So their seed renewal tactics are completely horrendous, according to these farmers. The lawsuits, the threats, I mean, and there's this huge corporation. How could people possibly stand up to them? And when the government really isn't doing anything, and when you see the revolving door, it's just really hard to face up to this, Goliath.
And are farmers fighting back?
Yes, they are. Last year, we saw 250,000 small farmers, which is a lot, try to do a counter lawsuit against Monsanto. Unfortunately, a district judge dropped the case. But in Brazil, 5 million Brazilian farmers are suing Monsanto, which is a huge number. And Monsanto has so many monocrops of soy and corn across the world, and we see a lot of countries either banning Monsanto outright or requiring labeling because they are more taking the preventative action instead of saying, we're going to wait and see after these generations, like America's doing, where they're saying, there's no proof. They're kind of taking preemptive measures and saying there is enough proof, and we're going to, give the consumers the choice. And I really think that's the real issue here, is that it's not even about the health effects. It's about giving consumers the choice to eat GMO foods or not. And that's the choice that we don't have right now.
And so, and you had mentioned a huge percentage of the food that, if you go to the grocery store, that is on our shelves, do contain GMOs. I mean, as a consumer, what can one do to kind of take control of what they're putting into their bodies?
It's really hard, Liz, because even some stores like Whole Foods, who tout, as mainly organic, even they have not said that they're completely organic. It's very hard to tell now what is organic and what really isn't. But mostly, just supporting local farmers, going to your farmer's market, buying organic as much as you can. There's a non-GMO shopping guide and an app that I actually just downloaded on my iPhone, where you can determine, where to shop, who to support, what's really going on, because it really is up to us. It's up to us, the consumer, because we really can't count on these regulatory bodies to determine whether or not these foods are safe when we see this kind of corruption and collusion going on.
All right. Well, luckily there was a natural farmers market over here in D.C. over the weekend. I'm glad I was able to check that out. Hopefully we'll see more of those. Abby, thanks for staying on top of this really important story. That was Abby Martin, RT correspondent.